And what do you know? What, the GOAT is back. Mason Rudolph has signed a 2-year deal per multiple sources to come to return to the Pittsburgh Steelers to be their backup quarterback, their QB2, which is crazy because they're announcing that he's QB2. Don't get excited. He's not going to be QB1. He's going to be in the backup position, which I think his pay also is an indication of that. I think it's like 2 years, $8 million, $4 million per year. I'm not sure about the guarantees. I'll see if I can find some tweets on it here in a second. But breaking news, he's back. This is a move that I like, to be 110% honest with you. I thought that the Steelers should have kept him last year. I thought the Steelers did him an injustice when they were going out there saying that they wanted to bring him back, kind of similar to what they were saying about Russ and Fields, which I have said since the beginning that that's not going to happen. That would have, if that would have happened, that would have happened way earlier. You guys heard it from me first. I said Justin Fields will not be signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are not interested in him as a QB1 in the same manner. The reports can say all they want, but they said they were sounded very familiar last year when it came to Mason Rudolph. And what do you know? We're in a situation now where Art Rooney said it's going to be either Russ or Fields, and they're looking forward to bringing at least one of those guys back and have confidence in both of those guys to be the starter. Yeah, Russell Wilson seems to be high and dry right now, but I digress on that. Let's get into the breaking news. So Gary Dulac posted a little while ago saying Steelers are bringing back Mason Rudolph to be their backup quarterback while awaiting on Rodgers, per sources. And he also tweeted about 13 hours ago, I apologize, saying apparently the delay in Aaron Rodgers' discussion with the Steelers is not about money. The offer has been made. It's about Rodgers taking his good old time, making a decision, which sounds like Rodgers. I mean, if everybody, look, Steelers made some lowball offers to a bunch of quarterbacks, right? But none of them stuck. It doesn't really seem like any of them were real. To be 110% honest with you, nothing that was going to sway the decision maker, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like the amount of money that they offered Justin Fields was not a starter money. Now I understand people are going to look at it and say, "Oh, $15 million, $30 million, $50 million guarantee, $30 million over 2 years. That's a lot of money." That's not a lot of money. The market is what the market is. When I was on the Steel Curtain Network on The Hangover, there was a guy that made a comment in the comment section that I really liked, and he said it's not about your feelings, it's about the market, it's about the facts. At the end of the day, the market is where it's at. If you're looking for a quarterback to be a starter, the minimum amount of money is what the minimum amount of money is, to pay for that person. And right now, the least amount any quarterback that is projected to start that's not on a rookie deal is $20 million per year, and that's Justin Fields. If the Steelers were really adamant about keeping Fields, they would have been able to have matched at least, at the very bare minimum, the lowest paid starting quarterback in the NFL that's not on a rookie contract, and that was at $25 million. So, I strongly believe that had the Pittsburgh Steelers gone in there and offered Justin Fields 18, 19, $20 million a year back in at the end of February, he'd be a Pittsburgh Steeler. But they didn't want to do it then. Now, could it have been they wanted to wait and see if maybe his price will go down? I don't understand how that would have been feasible. Every year, the cost for players goes up. I mean, look at what they just paid for an inside linebacker special teams guy out of the Ravens 1 year, $10 million. And I don't think he's projected to be one of the two guys that are going to be out there majority of the time on the defensive side. The Steelers just paid $150 million to DK Metcalf, a wide receiver from outside of the organization, which is something that the Steelers don't normally do. And so, I'm seeing the bag being passed around, except for what should have been a no-brainer deal. Because now, if the reports were correct and that the Pittsburgh Steelers were wanting Justin Fields and that was their guy, not only did they lose their guy, but they're potentially waiting on an older option that's way more expensive. And so I don't think the Steelers screwed themselves up that bad. I think the option was Aaron Rodgers the entire time. I think they knew he was going to get cut, and they've had their eyes set on that option since then. Because if it was Fields or it was anybody else, they would have gotten it done. They could have gotten them done, and they chose not to. The offer's been made to Aaron Rodgers. Apparently, it's a good offer. Is it $40 million a year? I don't know, but I don't think it's less than what he was getting at the Jets at $33 million a year, because At $40 million a year is 75% of what starting quarterbacks are making. The average of the average, or the highest paid, he's at the 75% mark. He's not the top paid guy. He's paid more than 75% of the league, but there's a good 25% of the starting quarterbacks that are out there that are going to be getting paid more than him, who have less accolades. And to be honest with you, I'd rather have Rodgers than a few of those guys, whether it's the Geno Smiths or the Sam Darnolds of the world, or the Baker Mayfields. I would prefer to have today for this year. Now, perhaps maybe long term, no, because today I'd still have Rodgers, because that would mean that the Steelers would be drafting a quarterback of the future in the draft within this year or the next year, which I'm hoping it's next year. I'm planning for Manning, which is why I think the Steelers are doing a lot of the things they're doing with the compensation or compensatory picks that they're going to be getting. Because if you notice, a lot of the players that the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed are not big name free agents. I think there's been just one or two. And the persons or the players that they've gotten that are some of the star players, including the potential Aaron Rodgers, are players that were either traded or cut or released, which don't fit in the formula for the comp pick formula, compensatory formula. And so what this means is that potentially in next year's draft, the Steelers are going to have a couple of third rounders, a fourth rounder, maybe a fifth or a sixth, something of that nature. And that could be used to really get into a position to draft yourself that quarterback of the future. I think the Steelers are playing chess this time and not checkers, and are looking at the longevity of this, which is what you want out of your team. And honestly, I think that's probably what's the best, because the Steelers have positioned themselves, in my opinion, to have a very good team that's going to surround a quarterback, and they just need that QB to push them through. And if you get a guy that's a franchise dude like an Archie Manning, and I understand he hasn't played a lot of games, this and a third, and we might be jumping the gun here, but it's okay. I'm a fan. I can jump the gun. I don't work for the Steelers. So, if the Steelers if he ends up being as advertised and they can get him in next year's draft, that transition from Aaron Rodgers to him in a year or so, or in his second year, would be could be a really, really good one. And when it comes to the quarterbacks that are left out there, I still think that Aaron Rodgers is probably the one that, if the Steelers are going to get to the Super Bowl, that he can lead them. I have little confidence in the other quarterbacks, even the ones that were gathered, the Sam Darnolds, the Danny Jones of the world. I thought maybe perhaps they could in a season be available more, maybe perhaps have a brighter future, because Aaron Rodgers is at the tail end of his career. But if I was going into a playoff game today and quarterbacks were healthy, I'd take Aaron Rodgers over all of them. So, that's where I'm at. But the first domino drops. They pick up Mason Rudolph. Let's look at a couple of things, as we always do. And let's look at his statistics. So before going to Tennessee, where he was 1-4, he actually had a pretty decent record. With the Steelers, he was, what is that, like 8-4-1. And so that's not really that too bad of a record as a quarterback. With Tennessee, he dropped 1-4. And so that puts him at, I believe it was like 8-1 on his career. On his career as well, he where was it at? I had it somewhere. Let's just compare him to Justin Fields, because that's who just left, right? So you're looking at 9-8-1 to a Mason Rudolph to 14-30 with Justin Fields. Now, again, teams make a difference. At 1-4, I'm saying, the Tennessee Titans had a big part of that. The team that he was surrounded him had a big part of that. The organization, maybe so. They were transitioning from one coach to another at the end there. Or it started off as a transition from one coach to another. So they're trying to figure themselves out at this point. With Justin Fields, he went into a bad organization as well. So let's see. As far as passing yards per attempt, Justin Fields is at 7.0. Mason Rudolph is at 6.7, so he's a little bit lower. Mason Rudolph's more accurate, or has more completions at 63%, 63.7% to Justin Fields 61.1%. Yards per game passing is almost the same. Mason Rudolph has a little bit more yards per passing at 159.1 yards to 155.6. Obviously, the difference there is going to be in the running. Justin Fields is going to have way more yards rushing than Mason Rudolph. In fact, you can add a 0 there. And rushing yards, Justin Fields is at 2,509 to Mason Rudolph's 203. And so that's where a lot of the offense comes in when it comes to Justin Fields, where you have to, it's the deciding factor. When it comes to touchdowns, Justin Fields has it at 45. However, he does have a significant amount of more games than Mason Rudolph, passing wise, at least 45 passing touchdowns to 28 passing touchdowns to Mason Rudolph, 20 interceptions for Mason, 31 interceptions for Justin. You know, these guys are kind of on par with their touchdown interception rate. Mason beats him with an 84.7, Justin at 83.9. So it's pretty much the same. And the rest of it is just going to be all rushing. And that's where obviously Justin Fields is going to take over with a 6.0 rushing yard per average to Mason's 3.0. Mason does have one rushing touchdown, but Justin Fields has 19. So it's a big difference there and a huge part of Justin Fields' game. But Mason, you know, what his game was protecting the ball and then, you know, throwing these moon balls also to the side. You know, he kind of avoided the middle as well, but I don't know if that was so much because he didn't want to throw over the middle or if that was because he was directed not to throw over the middle. You know, so but comparable, they're about the same, you know, outside on the passing rate, not necessarily the on the rushing side. But let's look at a couple of things that I wanted to point out. As a passer, completion wise, Mason Rudolph, his rookie year was at 62%. In 2020, he dipped down to 58.1%. That was the COVID year. I think he only had one game, and that was against the Lions. I think maybe he came in against the Browns at the end of that year too. But in both games, there one game he had, it was just horrible weather. That was the game where Pat Fairmouth fumbled, and I believe Deontay Johnson fumbled as well. There was 2 fumbles there at the end of the game and one in overtime. Ended up in a tie. And then at the end of the season, the Steelers had already clinched, and they weren't playing for anything, so a lot of the starters were taken out. In 2021, his completion rating went up to 60%, and in 2023 at the end there, when he just kind of let it rip, he was like, you know what, I'm going to trust my receivers. I'm just going to throw the ball. He was at 74.3%. I mean, it was a huge jump in production for Mason Rudolph in 2023. I've been known to say that with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, that their early success could have been an issue with like tape, right? NFL teams needed to get film, get multiple games, and so understand what your tendencies are and what you want to do. And that I felt that both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson were figured out in the Arthur Smith offense within about 5-6 games, which is why they struggled after that, or especially Russell Wilson. Could that have happened with Mason Rudolph? Potentially, you know, he had played 3 games. Each game statistically wasn't as good as the one before. However, there was some, you know, key games in there, one against the Ravens, one against Seattle, teams that were fighting for position of playoff position or for a playoff place in general. So, you know, he had that going for him back in 2021 or 23. He had thrown for 719 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. In the regular season, he didn't have any interceptions. And postseasons when he finally got picked off. But he did well in that year. And then last year with Tennessee, not so great. But his percentage, you know, was still pretty high, 64% completion. He had 9 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. You know, a brand new team, coach, and players around him, and a team that maybe isn't as talented as the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, you know, I think that if you surround Mason Rudolph with the right players, I think he can definitely show that he can be a game manager. And at the end of the day, that's all you need. But again, I think he's going to end up backing up Aaron Rodgers. Here's another tweet that Aaron Rodgers had asked for a Pirates hat. It was a misplaced series hat. A lot of people are going crazy over that. You know, about that purchase there. But we'll see. We'll see. It's only time will tell. Let me make sure. Let me see before I call it a show that nothing else is broke. But if you guys want to watch some video of Mason Rudolph back in the Steelers back in 2023, I'm going to drop a video right here. You'll see it. Let me pull this off real quick. You'll see it in the backside, I think. And check that out. It's our hype video of Mason Rudolph when he was going through into the playoffs. You don't want to miss it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Until next time, we'll see you then. Peace.